What's up guys, OCDMTG coming back at you with another Lord Windgrace video. My first video I did was a deck tech, and this will be an explanation video for my non-land permanents in the deck and why I choose to run certain things. For me personally, I am a deck builder that likes to do combos and synergistic things, so for my favorite deck, Lord Windgrace, I've put a lot of thought and energy into it. It has some of your typical land matters things, but also just some good Jund stuff in general. So getting into it, the Planeswalker I run is Lord Windgrace as my commander. He's got pretty good land synergy when it comes to his +2 and -3. So +2, discard a card, draw a card. But if I discard a land card, I get to draw 2 cards instead. -3, return up to 2 land cards from a graveyard to the battlefield. His -11 I tend to never really use. It's good for if you want to get rid of a bunch of stuff on board really quick, but you don't usually get up to that -11 pretty fast in the game. It's usually mid to late game if anything, but more than likely I'm using his +2 or -3. So when we get into the deck, we're going to use a lot of redundancy in the deck. I like to do things like that for my builds. So Amulet of Vigor and Tiller Engine, we got these to make my lands that are coming in tapped, untap. Also, Tiller Engine has a little nifty thing that I can either untap a land that comes in tapped, or I could tap a non-land permanent opponent controls. So good for getting blockers out of the way if I'm having to swing in. So we got those. We have life gaining strategies for my casual decks. I like to have ways of gaining life in all of my decks. So for this, we have Zeratin Orb and Titania, Voice of Gaia. Titania says whenever one or more lands enter my graveyard from anywhere, I gain 2 life. It's also got Reach, which is good for blocking for Windgrace. Zeratin Orb is a artifact that lets me sack a land to gain 2 life. If I have both out, I can sack a land, gain 4 life. Pretty good. Next we have land playing from graveyards, Ancient Green Warrior and Crucible of Worlds. Notice that I have creatures that have the same effects as non-creature permanents to do the same things, hence redundancy. Crucible of Worlds lets me play lands from my graveyard for 3 mana, not bad. Ancient Green Warden doubling it to 6, gives it Reach, also good for blocking for my commander, lets me play lands from graveyard, and also has this nifty ability of doubling my landfall triggers. Not a lot of landfall things in the deck, but when I do have the landfall things out, they are good. Next, we have color fixing in the sense of Prismatic Omen and Dryad of Elysian Grove. For Dryad of Elysian Grove, lets me play an extra land per turn, and makes all my lands every basic land type. Same with Prismatic Omen, makes my lands every basic land type. Again, creature form, non-creature form. And then we have ways of returning lands back to my hand in the form of Multani, Yavimai's Avatar, and Mina and Den Wildborn. Multani, if he's in the grave, let's say, for instance, I pitch him to Lord Windgrace's first ability. I pitch him, draw a card, and then if he's in the graveyard, I can pay 1 and a green, return 2 lands I control to my hand to return Multani back to hand. So he's also a way to use for other cards I have in the deck, like we have Rishkar's Expertise. If he's a big boy, I can draw a bunch of cards. Or I've had Momentous Fall, sacrifice him, draw a bunch of cards, gain a bunch of life. He's usually never anything less than a 5/5. And he also has Reach. Are we seeing a theme here? Reach, blocking for my commander. He gets hit a lot by flyers. Also, he's just good for taking beats. If he dies, I can come back. Mina and Den, returning land back to hand using Hit's ability. Red and green, return a land back to my hand. Give a target creature trample until end of turn. It's useful for Skithiryx if I'm flying in for damage and I need it to have trample, or just having a big thing in general, like a big Corvold with trample. Stuff along those lines. Also lets me play an extra land per turn. So those are ways of returning back to my hand some lands. For the win cons of the deck, like I was mentioning before, we got Skithiryx. I don't deal commander damage with my commander. So the way to fix that, I use Jessica Thresherborn and Skithiryx the Blight Dragon. I'm going to infect people, punishing people with no flying and no reach, infecting them, not having to deal 21 damage with commander, but 10 damage with infect. He's a flying 4/4. Infect, I can pay a black, give him haste. I can pay 2 black to regenerate him, so he protects himself, and he can give himself haste, which is nice. Jessica, usually coming in with 1 or 2 loyalty counters, because by the time I play Windgrace, he's either once or twice out, depending on if I get killed. So Jessica comes in. You're not really using the -X ability. If you're running an evolution stage, which I did for a long time, there's a little fun thing you can do with like a Splendid Wreck. Have this out. Evolution stage triggers a bunch of times, giving her a bunch of loyalty, and then you can -X to like deal a bunch of damage to your opponents. I have the evolution stage in like a sideboard as a more casual way of winning with her, but usually I'm zeroing Jessica, giving Skithiryx triple damage, infecting opponents with a single hit, usually. Another win con I have in the deck is Titania, Protector of Argoth, and Tear of the Peaks. So Titania says whenever land from my field hits my grave, I'm usually going to make a 5/3. Tear of the Peaks says whenever a creature enters my battlefield, I'm dealing damage from that creature's power to any target I want. So if I have an instant speed way of sacking lands to my graveyard, making 5/3s, dealing damage with Tear of the Peaks with those said 5/3s. Another fun way to kill my opponents. And then the last ways to kill my opponents usually are going to be Dread Presence and Cavalier of Flame. Both have synergistic things with my land matter strategies. Cavalier of Flame has a lot of activated abilities and abilities that in general are just good. So it's a 6/5. I can pay 1 in a red. Creatures I control get +1/+0 in haste until end of turn. So if I have a big board, I want to swing out, have him enter, activate his ability, give everything haste. It also has the ability of when it enters the battlefield, discard any number of cards and draw that many cards. So let's say I have a hand of lands that are just chilling there and a Cavalier of Flame in hand. Cast Cavalier of Flame, ETB, discard a bunch of lands, draw that many cards. Good way of getting a bunch of lands out of my hand if I draw a bunch of cards, and then drawing more cards. Also, its last ability, whenever it dies, it deals X damage to each opponent and each planeswalker they control, where X is the number of lands in my graveyard. I like verse Super Friends decks every now and then. This is a secret, really good card that I like to tutor out as fast as possible. So, if I can kill it, I'll deal damage to all my opponent's planeswalkers that they have on board. Pretty good. I run 38 lands in my deck. If I have all 38 lands in my graveyard for some reason, which I can get every now and then, Cavalier dies, and then I have damage of 38 to all my opponents all at the same time. Dread Presence, whenever a land hits by battlefield, it's a swamp, draw a card and lose a life, or deal 2 damage to any target and gain 2 life. So let's say I have a bunch of swamps enter, I can draw a card for each one, lose 1 life. Dread Presence also deals 2 damage to any target and gain 2 life, so more life gain. I like to have things in my deck that have multiple purposes, so having these 2 cards, pretty good. I've got card draw in the form of Gitrog and Korvold. For Gitrog, every time a land hits my graveyard from anywhere, draw a card. Korvold, whenever I sack a permanent, draw a card. These 2 are my main card draw engines in the deck. Also, I can draw or play extra lands per turn with Gitrog. Yeah, he's a big body, 6/6. Korvold, flying, can block for days as well. My 3 dragons in the deck, I think, are very good. But Korvold also is really good with treasures. I can make a lot of treasures in the deck, getting a lot of card draws. He's basically the pseudo commander of the deck, since Windgrace can't really be like a big hitter. Korvold it's kind of like a replacement. When I have these guys out, they're drawing me cards. Root Path Purifier makes my lands in my library and lands I control basic. So I have a bunch of fetches that search for basic lands. If I have this out, I can search out things that I need. And it also makes my Cultivate and Kodama Reach not dead late game. I can cast those, add 2 lands of whatever I want to my hand and to the battlefield. My utility creatures that I run in the deck, we got Sylvan Safekeeper, Vexing Shusher, and Deathrite Shaman. So for Deathrite Shaman, Vexing Shusher, this is good for hitting graveyard hate. I don't have a lot of graveyard hate in the deck. Deathrite Shaman can hit an instant, a sorcery, or a creature in my grave, or not my grave, in opponent's grave. And I can do that instant speed, hitting key combo pieces that my opponents might be able to combo off with. Vexing Shusher if I'm in a blue pod. Since I'm a Jund player, I want things to go through. So I will use my Vexing Shusher for escape shift plays or Splendid Wreck plays. Anything important that I want to do and have protection. Sylvan Safekeeper, I can sack land to give a target creature I control Shroud until end of turn. It's good for instant speed. My opponent's trying to hit a key piece, and I have this out. Give it protection till end of turn. Also helps with my land matter synergies of Gitrog monster, drawing cards, Corvold, drawing cards. Just in general, good at getting lands in my graveyard for Splendid Wreck plays, stuff like that. My last 3 creatures that are utility creatures got Lotus Cobra, Tireless Provisioner, and Tireless Tracker. Tireless Provisioner and Tireless Tracker, good at making clues, food, and treasures. I'm usually making treasures with this guy though, to be honest. I've got a lot of life gain in the deck, but it is nice to have an extra thing of life gain if I have a bunch of mana and a bunch of landfall triggers I can do, and I don't need the mana. I can make food, gain life. Lotus Cobra, good for early game for sure, making lots of extra mana every time land enters. These are my probably only landfall creatures that I'm going to run the deck just because they're the best that I have available to me right now. And the last creatures in the deck are going to be our mana dorks. We run about 5. We got Arbor Elf, Purds, Ignoble Hierarch, Ornithopter, Paradise, and Enduring Vitality. Arbor Elf can be dead every now and then. There's not a lot of forests per se in the deck, but like I said, I got the Prismatic Omen, I got the Dryad of Elysian Grove, making them forests, so I'm able to use it to untap a target forest. There are 8 fetches in the deck that can grab forests in the deck, which make it less dead, but every now and then it has the ability of being dead. Had to replace my mana crypt with whatever I could, so Arbor Elf took that spot. Same thing with Ornithopter of Paradise. Wasn't running it before, but as flying, can tap for any color mana, so why not? The main things I do like to go for like tutors early game, Birds of Paradise and Ignoble Hierarch, tap for any color mana that I need. Birds also, as a flyer, can block for Windgrace. Ignoble Hierarch, every now and then the Exalted can come in handy for like Skithiryx. So instead of a 4/4, I'm flying in for 5. If it attacks by itself, then it's only 2 hits of Skithiryx if I don't have the Jessica. The last, we have Enduring Vitality, new to the deck. Makes my creatures tap for any mana of any color. So we have the Enduring Vitality that if it was to die, it can become just an enchantment, sit there for a long time if it doesn't get removed. Make all my creatures be able to tap for mana. So if I'm going for like a big play, if I can give my creatures haste using Cavalier Flames, for instance, I can tap those creatures in the same turn they come out. And those would be all my creatures, and my artifacts and enchantments to round out the list are going to be Soul Ring, best card in the game, didn't get banned. Why not? It's not a mana crypt, but it'll do. Exploration and Burgeoning, extra land per turn. Pretty good turn 1, can get faster than your opponents. Burgeoning was another thing that I did to replace my mana crypt. So if I have a land hand full of like 4 to 5 lands and a Burgeoning, I'm going to keep it. Burgeoning turn 1, and then going land. Turn 2, I'll have potentially 4 to 5 mana. Maybe cast the Windgrace on turn 2. So in theory, it's better than mana crypt, but it's kind of inconsistent, and it's dead mid to late game. So that's what I'm going to do for now. No mana crypt, just going to use Burgeoning. A little tech enchantment I like to have in the deck, Ayla's Influence. Ayla's Influence is a enchantment that lets me discard a land to create a 2/2 bear. Yes, it's a little hard with the 3 green pips, but it is a good way of getting lands out of my hand. There are 38 lands in the deck, so I have a lot of lands every now and then that I draw that are just kind of sitting there. I can instant speed, do little combat tricks like put out a bear, discarding land, block for Windgrace. Or I can discard a land, have Gitrog trigger. If I have him out, draw a card every time I discard a land. Let's say I have Titania out. I discard a land, gain 2 life. Since it's individual discards of lands, I can get multiple triggers with Titania, multiple triggers with Gitrog. So a little tech choice that I like to do. It's a good way of doing little nifty tricks. And then the last two enchantments, Squander Resources and Fires of Yavimaya. I will not really play these cards unless I have a board presence already. You don't want these to get like just killed out of nowhere, so you kind of hold them. In my way of playing, I'm a more defensive player than I am like offensive and aggro. So when I have a board full of bodies, I like to play fires after I have the board established. Creatures I control have haste. I can also sack it, give a target creature +2/+2 until end turn. A little nifty thing I can use with Corvold if I have a Corvold out and I just need to draw like one more card for some reason. If I have Vampiric Tutor, sack my fires, trigger Corvold, draw a card. Also Squander Resources, stacking lands. So it's good with Gitrog, it's good with Titania. I can do this for big plays and continuing comboing, sacking lands to add 1 mana to my mana pool of any color. And it can make my utility lands tap for, or make mana for if I have Dryad of Lucian Grove out or Prismatic Omen. And then the last non-land permanent in the deck, Invasion of Ikoria. It is a battle, the only battle in the deck. So I'm usually using this to grab utility creatures, or if I need something for card draw. Invasion of Ikoria says pay X into it, search for a non-human creature card. Important. So for my creature list, I only have 2 humans that I can't grab. So I have Tireless Provisioner and I have Sylvan Safekeeper. These 2 are the only humans that I can't grab with Invasion of Ikoria. It is kind of annoying that I can't grab this because it is a very good card for protection, and this is a good card for early game card draw, but it is what it is. Gets every other creature, I'm not going to complain. If I do flip it, it is kind of useful. The ability to have a creature that allows me to have my creatures attack like they can't be blocked, good for Skithrix, but more than likely, I'm just using it to search out a creature. Well, that rounds out all my non-land permanents for the deck. This is part 1 of my video explanation. I'm going to upload this. If it gets any good feedback, I'll upload the second part sooner than later. And I'll do my non-permanent cards, like my instants and sorceries, and do an explanation video of my lands in that same video. But until then, signing off.